Howdy Carp, hello and welcome to another video presentation with Victor Black. In today's video we're going to be looking at estrogen modulation, estrogen management, when we introduce performance enhancing drugs, the consequence of the estrogen that's produced in that, and how do we modulate that. So let's begin our video with talking about estrogen production in the male of the species under natural conditions. So we're going to start as naturals, and then we're going to basically introduce exogenous testosterone to that, and then I'm going to show you what the consequence of that is and how we then potentially manage that. So let's begin with a couple of interesting estrogen facts. A lot of people tend to associate estrogen with the female sex. It's actually kind of strange they do, because both sexes actually have estrogen. It's part of our biological requirement. And interestingly enough, women actually have more testosterone than they have estrogen. Most people tend to think, well, estrogen is a female sex hormone, that they have lots of estrogen. That's not true. Women produce very, very small amounts of testosterone. This is true, but they have even less, like 3 times less estrogen than do testosterone. So the amount of estrogen in someone's, biological makeup is actually really small. I'm going to get to this in a minute, but the amount of estrogen that's converted from testosterone is like 1/4 to 0.5%. It's quite a small amount. Okay, very vital hormone, but very small compared to the amount of testosterone that we have, both for men and for women. Okay, so let's talk about how estrogen is produced. Basically, the brain, the hypothalamus, right, sends a signal to the pituitary gland to basically send luteinizing hormone to the Leydig cells in the testes. And the testes then produce testosterone. And as natural people, we produce relatively small amounts of testosterone every day. And you can see there's a range. About 3 to 10 milligrams of testosterone a day is kind of normal for adults. And what happens then is some percentage of that testosterone is converted to both DHT, and some percentage is converted to estrogen. This is completely normal. This is completely natural. And you notice the ratios here. 5 to 8% of total testosterone is converted to DHT, and significantly smaller amount is converted to estrogen. Okay, some people will say up to 10% here, by the way. Not that that matters. We'll talk about DHT in another video. Today we're talking about estrogen. So very small amounts of the testosterone that we produce are then aromatized into estradiol. Okay, this is a normal, natural, biological function. Okay, so what then happens is when the testosterone is converted to estradiol, right, the estradiol then binds to the estrogen receptor. And both DHT and testosterone then can bind to the androgen receptor. DHT is androgenic. Okay. So what we're talking about doing in our world is fundamentally significantly increasing our testosterone that's available for conversion. That's what we're doing. We're raising this amount of testosterone. So it's inevitable that even though these ratios are going to stay approximately the same, there's no reason for these ratios to change, right? We're going to see heightened estradiol and heightened DHT in our blood work. Just probably stating the obvious, yeah? Okay, so let's look at what that looks like. Now, this information is based on someone taking 200 milligrams of testosterone every 2 weeks. So this is TRT type doses, but this concept scales up, all the way up to the doses that, and people use super physiological doses, right? What's important to note here is this range of individual response. So what we're looking at here is here's a chart that plots the administration of 200 milligrams of testosterone on day 1 and the resulting blood serum levels in nanograms per deciliter over 14 days. And you can see there's a range of response. This is what we would call the mean, the average, all right? And as a direct consequence of that range, you can see there's also a range for DHT and a range for estradiol. Okay? Estradiol isn't a fixed thing. It's not like you take drugs, you have this, you have to basically respond in the following way. If you haven't yet watched my video on PCT 101, I recommend that you watch that following this video. Basically, what you'll understand is that when it comes to estrogen management, estrogen modulation, just like with PTC, there's a range of things that we can talk about. Everything from literally do nothing at all, to the use of AIs, aromatase inhibitors. And what's important here for guys to understand, this is the takeaway today. This is your takeaway today. There's a range of things in the middle that you can do. This is not a digital discussion. This is not a black and white discussion. This is not on, off. There's a range of solutions from doing nothing, right, to basically going straight to AIs. Now, when I say do nothing, you have to understand that there is a camp, there is a school of thought, and I understand the school of thought. Excuse me, just have a sip of my tea. There is a school of thought that says, provided you're not experiencing side effects from the raised estrogen levels, let it go, right? Clearly, we don't want the side effects that come with that. We need to modulate within range of side effects. But as long as you're not experiencing side effects, let it ride. It's valid. I can understand that. Pretty strong argument to be made. In fact, I tend to, and we'll discuss this as we get into future videos, I tend to be more in this like moderation zone. I do everything moderately. I mean, if you haven't figured that out by now, I'm the voice of moderation, right? You have to understand that AIs, in my opinion, are overused in this business. Right? People kind of go, I'm taking testosterone, they immediately start taking an AI. I understand why they think that way. I do, because it's the dominant way of thinking in this space. But you have to understand that these compounds were designed principally for women, treating women's breast cancer. That's what they were developed for. They were not developed for bodybuilders or men on testosterone replacement therapy to manage estrogen. So by definition, they were designed to treat basically, a medical problem in what you would consider to be relatively short-term time frame. Okay, relatively. When we're talking about steroid use in my world or TRT use, we're talking potentially lifetime use. Lifetime, 10, 20, 30 years, right? So any time that you can remove a medication or minimize the use of a medication, this to me is a good thing. This idea that you would simply reach for an off-label medicine and use it for the rest of your life, I don't necessarily think that's the starting point for the discussion. You might well end up there, fine, right? And let's be honest, if you're jamming down a gram a week of testosterone, you don't have a bloody choice. That's it. This is the world you live in, AIs, right? Because that's the consequence of using those sorts of doses. But if you live in TRT world, right, or you live in my world of moderate use, there is, let's do 400 milligrams a week, right? There's a range of modulation solutions that are available to you. And that's what I want you to take away from this video today. It's not simply a case of, what do you do for estrogen, brah? I take a half a Arimidex every other day. That's okay. That's the mark of a beginner. You're saying to me, okay, so you're a beginner. What about the other options? What do we explore before we reach for medication? So let me explain why we take anti-estrogens, right? When you take a super physiological dose of testosterone, you experience spikes of delivery, all right? And this is basically determined by the dose and the time between administrations. So if we go back to where's my picture here? Here, okay. You can see here 200 milligrams a week, all right, caused a rise in serum testosterone levels that resulted in a corresponding follow-on rise from estradiol. And when the testosterone dipped back into normal range after, let's call it 5 or 6 days, all right, then estrogen eventually followed behind that. There's a bit of a lag going on here, right? But eventually we made it back into normal range territory, right? So how you apply the testosterone, the administration methodology, and the dose that you use is going to directly correspond to the degree of severity of your estrogen management issue. what you need to do. It's not a blanket discussion. When you take steroids, you do this. That's very, very, very naive. Okay. The other thing you have to take into account is the fact that we're all individuals. Not only do we have an individual variable response to testosterone, but as you get older, potentially, the story changes as well. So my focus is on older guys, right? So again, in a separate discussion, we're not going to discuss it in detail here. In a separate discussion, I'm going to explain to guys that there's a difference between young guys and older guys in terms of estrogen modulation. There is, right? So we need to understand what that looks like, right? And what implication does that have on our use, okay? So what I want to do today, I'm not going to get into a great deal of detail about the different solutions along this pathway. All right, there's lots and lots of them. There's natural solutions. There's complementary other compounds. For example, most people are familiar with the idea that products like Proviron and Masteron are anti-estrogenic by nature. They lend themselves to helping us in this endeavor. There's administration methodologies like the administration of subcutaneous testosterone can aid us in this endeavor. There's all sorts of things we're going to talk about in future videos. We're going to break off and talk about these different things. That's part of the discussion. This is the high level discussion. So at a high level point of view, I just want to explain how the 3 or 4 most commonly used estrogen modulation solutions work. So the oldest of the solutions that we have, right, in terms of development is basically Clomid. This was developed about 45 years ago, right? And again, it's a breast cancer treatment for women for estrogen-induced breast cancers, okay? And how it basically works is it's effectively an estrogen blocker. It prevents estrogen docking with the estrogen receptors. That's basically how it works. It blocks estrogen, okay? The second generation of aromatase inhibitors, right, which was letrozole and arimidex, all right, work in a different way. They don't do the same thing. They do something different. And basically what they do is they get in the middle of the aromatization process. They prevent the aromatization of testosterone to estrogen. My biggest concern with this methodology, this model, is the fact that we don't want to crush the estrogen by any means, all right? We want to modulate it. And these compounds were designed to aggressively address the problem for breast cancer, all right? So they're very powerful. They're very, very powerful tools, and they do a great job at doing that. But you have to be very sensitive and you have to be very careful with their application, or you can just do too much. And it's my opinion that a lot of guys hold back their growth progress by using AIs too aggressively. They basically are too hard on estradiol control, and therefore they miss out on the benefits of having estrogen in the system, which are many. All right, but let's just put them down to in the broader picture of things. It's all about recovery. Okay, grossly oversimplified, but let's just say that women, interestingly, have a higher recovery capacity than men. And a big part of that, in my opinion, is due to their hormonal makeup, right? They're better set up hormonally to recover quicker. If you're training with your wife, you're holding her back. She can train, recover, adapt faster than you, right? Because of her hormonal makeup. So if you crush estrogen, you crush your capacity to recover quickly and get back on the gym. You want to modulate it, manage it. Right? It's not about crushing estrogen. It's not about getting rid of estrogen. It's about making sure it doesn't run away with you when you raise your testosterone. So these products basically prevent the testosterone that's produced or introduced externally, either way, from converting into estradiol. That's how they work. Okay. The third thing, I'm just going to quickly show you something here if I can find it. Bear with me a sec. Okay, no. Okay, I'm going to have to go back to that picture. Oh, here we go. Here's the one I'm looking for. The third methodology that I will be talking about later in another video is basically about the use of things like Masteron. Masteron has been used extensively as a breast cancer treatment in women. Again, same concept. It's about managing estrogen, modulating estrogen. Today, compounds like Masteron are not used in breast cancer treatment. It's no longer really prescribed for that. Aromatase inhibitors have taken over that role. But if you kind of look at that logically, okay, so if Masteron was once used for this purpose and it's not used today, why is that? Why did they stop doing that? There's a couple of reasons. One was the virilization effect of any compound on women isn't ideal, right? It certainly worked as an estrogen modulation tool, but there were potential masculinizing side effects to that were being presented in some women. So they decided, let's look at a tool like a aromatase inhibitor on a preferential basis, because that doesn't present that potential side effect to use in women. But how things like Masteron work is they basically bind up with the aromatase enzyme. So they don't get in the way like a aromatase inhibitor does, but it kind of blocks up or occupies the enzyme itself that's responsible for aromatase, the aromatase enzyme. And again, I'm going to dig into that in detail later. So my overall point here, guys, the takeaway from this video: estrogen conversion from testosterone 1 is a natural process. It's not a consequence of steroid use. What happens is introducing higher levels of androgens, testosterone, results in high levels of serum testosterone, and a greater percentage, therefore, a larger amount of estrogen is then present as a consequence. Bring up your testosterone, a certain percentage of that testosterone is converted to estrogen, so now we have more estrogen to deal with. The process isn't driven by steroids, it's exacerbated by steroid use. Right? And then what we need to consider the fact is that it's not a digital solution. There is no do this. That's what kind of annoys me about conversations where people say, what do you do about estrogen? And they give a one-line answer that says, in half an Arimidex every other day. You're just a beginner. You don't even understand what you're doing. You read that somewhere, you copied and pasted it, and that's what you do. Fine, that's what you want to believe. Go away and believe that, buddy. The reality is that there's a range of solutions available to you, from doing nothing as long as you're not presented with side effects. Very strong, credible argument to be made down here. All the way up the far end of the spectrum are aromatase inhibitors. Do they work? Absolutely. My concern is, do you want to live on them? Right? And what we're going to be discussing as masterclass members is all of these middle ground solutions. All of the things that you might get away with on TRT, or you might get away with moderate use. And as I said, let me premise that by, if you're taking 1 gram a week of testosterone, forget about it. You need an AI. Go straight here. I agree with that, right? But if you're using TRT, or if you're using a little bit more than that, there's plenty of scope in this discussion for what else could I do? What are the natural, proven estrogen modulation tools that are available to the marketplace? What are the milder methodologies? Why would I be concerned about in the extreme end of the spectrum? Because potentially it's too aggressive. Potentially it's going to crush your gains and potentially expose you to off-label drug use for the rest of your life, when really that's not what that compound was designed to do. All right. So that's today's high-level estrogen modulation primer. If you enjoyed that video, please sign up for the masterclass. It's $5 a week, and we're going to be drilling in greater and greater detail to all of these discussions, and we're going to be educating ourselves about what we're doing here, not simply saying one-line response. Estrogen equals a half an Arimidex a day. That's what you want to believe. All power to you. Off you go, buddy. All power to you, right? If you're interested in educating yourself, if you're interested in risk mitigation, if you're interested in using the smallest amount of compounds, including ancillaries like estrogen management tools, join the masterclass, sign up. It's $5 a week, and send your questions in, and we'll help you out. Okay, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Sawadee ka.